So, what if the next 15 years are destined to be, well, basically hell on Earth? But what if, right after that, we get a near perfect utopia? I know it sounds like something straight out of a sci fi movie, but this is the actual forecast from former Google X executive Mo Gawdat. And the craziest part? He says the blame for the bad times lies squarely with us, not the machines. Let's dive into this wild and honestly pretty terrifying prediction.
Okay, so right out of the gate, Gaudet is not pulling any punches. He's basically saying we're past the point of being able to steer away from trouble. In his mind, the short-term dystopia, it isn't just a possibility, it's inevitable. That is a heavy, heavy thought, and it really sets the stage for the two completely different futures he sees coming our way.
So, what exactly are we talking about here? It's really a tale of two futures. On one side, you have a dystopia, a world of suffering that's managed or maybe mismanaged by us, by humanity. On the other side, a utopia, a perfect society of peace and happiness, all managed logically by AI. But the key difference, according to Gawdat, isn't the technology. It all comes down to one simple thing: who is in charge?
And there it is. The core of the problem isn't some rogue AI turning against its creators like in the movies. No, Gaudet says the real immediate danger is much, much simpler than that. We're about to hand this unbelievably powerful technology to human leaders who are, still driven by the same old flaws they've always been. Okay, so let's dig into the first part of his forecast, this coming period of darkness. And what's so important to get here is that he doesn't call it an AI dystopia. He is very clear. This is a human dystopia, where AI just becomes this incredibly powerful tool that we use to amplify our own worst instincts. And he actually puts a timeline on it, which makes this all feel incredibly real and urgent. He says we're seeing the first signs of trouble right now. He's predicting that by 2027, it'll be obvious that we're slipping into this dystopian period, and it could last for like 12 to 15 years. So what's going to drive us off this cliff? Well, according to Gawdat, it's this toxic cocktail of timeless human flaws. You've got the hunger for power, the endless pursuit of status, just pure unchecked greed. All of this gets magnified by what he calls a war economy mindset, where conflict is actually good for business. And then you throw gasoline on that fire with this frantic, high-stakes global race for AI dominance. And that war economy idea, that's not just a theory. To put a number on it, right now humanity spends over $2.7 trillion on the military in a single year. Gawdat says this just proves where our priorities are. We're feeding a system that pretty much requires conflict just to keep going.
It really all boils down to this one simple idea, right? You can't blame the hammer for the damage if you're the one swinging it around. The dystopian future he sees is entirely of our own making. AI is just the tool that's going to let us build that dystopia bigger, faster, and way more efficiently than we ever could before. But just when it all sounds completely hopeless, Gaudat's forecast takes this huge, dramatic turn. After the human-led hell, he predicts an AI-led heaven, a complete 180 into a world of abundance, health, and real human connection. I mean, he paints a picture that sounds almost too good to be true, doesn't it? A society where all the big pressures of modern life, the jobs, the healthcare bills, that feeling of never, ever having enough time, they just disappear. It would finally let us focus on what he believes really matters: each other. So how on earth would that even work? Well, a key piece of the puzzle is something called universal basic income, or UBI. The idea is, as AI and robots take over pretty much all the jobs, society would just provide everyone with enough money to live on. It would completely break that link between having to work and being able to survive. I mean, the benefits he describes are just staggering. Just imagine an AI optimizing everything so perfectly that the cost of energy and food and goods, it basically drops to zero. We'd be free from jobs we hate, free to pursue our real passions. And maybe the most revolutionary part, decisions would be made based on pure logic and efficiency, not human ego and all those political games. And this brings us to the most critical and, yeah, probably the most controversial part of his whole theory. How do we get from a dystopia we created to a utopia we clearly couldn't build on our own? The answer is something he calls the Great Handover. So here's the central paradox, right? This is the key question in his entire argument. If our own greed and our own ego are the things that drive us into dystopia in the first place, how could we possibly be the ones to build the utopia that comes after? It just doesn't add up. The answer is incredibly simple, and for a lot of people, deeply unsettling. We don't build it. We just get out of the way.
Gawdat is convinced that the only path to that utopian future is to voluntarily hand over the reins of global management to a superintelligent AI.
And the logic behind it is this really stark comparison. On one hand, you have human leaders who are driven by all these messy, destructive emotions like ego and greed. On the other hand, you'd have an AI leader driven by nothing but pure logic. It would probably follow what scientists call the minimum energy principle, always finding the most efficient path. And from a pure physics standpoint, things like war are just incredibly inefficient and wasteful. But okay, why would any power-hungry leader ever agree to give up control? Well, game theory. Gawdat argues that the first country to actually hand over major decisions to a hyperlogical AI will become so advanced, so efficient, that every other country will be forced to do the same thing just to have a chance of keeping up. Competition, ironically, will force us to cooperate with the machine.
So after all that, where does this leave us? We've arrived at the ultimate takeaway from Mo Gawdat's forecast. The technology for both of these futures, the dystopia and the utopia, it's coming, no matter what. The path we end up taking, that isn't a technological problem. It's a human one. And this quote, man, it really gets to the absolute heart of the matter. The whole struggle, the 15 years of hell he predicts, the incredible potential for a utopian world, it all comes down to a fundamental shift in how we think, in how we see the world. So the choice really boils down to these two completely different ways of thinking. We can stick with our current mindset, which is all about scarcity and competition and this endless chase for power and status. Or we can try to consciously shift to a new mindset, one built on abundance, collaboration, and what actually makes us happy and healthy.
Ultimately, Gawdat's forecast isn't just a prediction about the future. It's a challenge to every single one of us, right now. It leaves us with this provocative and deeply personal question. If the only thing standing between a world of suffering and a world of unbelievable joy is our own mindset, are we as a species actually willing to change it?